the Battle of Marathon, the sinking of the Titanic, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. All of these were undeniably important historical events. However, compared to other events of their time, like the Black Death, World War I, and the start of the Cold War, their impact on human history seems minor at best. But what if the story was a lot different? What if these somewhat insignificant events had much greater importance than we originally thought? Well, today we're retaking a look at some moments in history that had an impact far beyond what you might expect. So get ready, because here are 8 overlooked moments in history that changed the world. Number 8. The printing press. The year is 1440, and Gutenberg has just invented the printing press, which allows for the mass production of books and pamphlets. At first glance, it doesn't seem like a particularly important invention, since writing had already been around for thousands of years. And yes, people had been putting ideas down on paper long before the printing press. However, with this new machine, anyone could print anything they wanted, making it easier to spread information and ideas across large groups of people. Before this invention, scribes would spend years painstakingly copying manuscripts by hand, meaning that there weren't many around. And with knowledge being so limited, the power lay with those who had access to books. But now, with the printing press, books and pamphlets could be produced much faster and cheaper, leading to a wider availability of written materials. By 1500, there were over 10 million printed books in Europe alone, compared to the 200,000 manuscripts that existed before Gutenberg's invention. This allowed more people than ever to become educated and informed, and thus the Renaissance and Reformation movements gained speed. In fact, the printing press played such an important role in the scientific revolution that some historians consider it one of the most important inventions of the modern era. 7. The Edict of Milan. In 313 AD, 2 Roman emperors, Constantine and Licinius, issued a decree granting religious toleration to Christians within the Roman Empire. While not specifically mentioned in the Bible, this edict has been seen as a pivotal moment for the early church, marking a shift from persecution to acceptance. Prior to the Edict of Milan, Christians faced severe persecution, often enduring torture and execution for their beliefs. The situation became particularly dire under Emperor Diocletian, who launched a brutal campaign against them. But the issuance of the edict transformed the status of Christians within the empire. They were now free to worship without fear of immediate reprisal. It also granted them the right to retain their property and allowed them to participate in public life more fully. This newfound freedom enabled the church to grow rapidly. Within a century after the edict, Christianity went from a persecuted minority to becoming the dominant religion of the Roman Empire. This had massive implications for the course of Western civilization, and yet most people don't even know about it. 6. The destruction of Carthage. Between 264 BC and 241 BC, Rome and Carthage fought a series of wars known as the Punic Wars. The conflict arose due to expanding Roman influence in the Western Mediterranean, which threatened Carthaginian interests. The First Punic War resulted in a stalemate. However, the Second Punic War saw Hannibal Barca, a brilliant Carthaginian general, lead his army through the Alps, invading Italy. Despite early Carthaginian successes, Rome ultimately triumphed. Hannibal was defeated at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, marking a decisive Roman victory. The terms of peace were harsh, with Carthage being stripped of its overseas territories, demilitarized, and forced to pay a heavy indemnity. This effectively ended Carthage's status as a major power and left Rome as the dominant force in the Mediterranean. But the consequences of this war extended far beyond the Mediterranean. With Carthage out of the picture, Rome's control over the Western Mediterranean was absolute, allowing it to focus on its eastern campaigns. This contributed to Rome's rapid expansion into Greece and the Near East, shaping the trajectory of the entire Mediterranean world. 5. The introduction of steel. You may not realize it, but steel has had a monumental impact on humanity, influencing everything from the way we build homes to how we wage war. This versatile material has been used to create towering skyscrapers, mighty battleships, and intricate works of art. In fact, it can be found in almost every aspect of modern life. But did you know that before 1856, steel was incredibly rare and expensive, making it a luxury material accessible only to the elite few? But then Henry Bessemer invented a cost-effective method for mass-producing steel, which led to a boom in construction and industrialization. Suddenly, steel became a staple material in bridges, railways, tools, and buildings, forever changing the way we live and work. Because of this innovation, cities could expand vertically, and trade could be conducted more efficiently than ever before. Even the weapons of war became deadlier and more durable. Overall, Bessemer's invention sparked an era of progress and innovation, propelling us into the modern age. 4. The Crusades. The Crusades were a series of religious expeditions sanctioned by the Latin Church in the medieval period. The primary objective of these crusades was to reclaim the Holy Land, specifically Jerusalem, which had been captured by Muslim forces. Motivated by religious zeal, European Christians embarked on these campaigns to recapture these holy sites. Over the course of several centuries, there were multiple crusades with varying degrees of success. Though the military objectives of retaking Jerusalem were largely short-lived, the Crusades had far-reaching consequences. First and foremost, they fostered increased communication and trade between Europe and the Middle East, leading to the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultural influences. Additionally, the Crusades inadvertently contributed to the decline of feudalism in Europe, as European nobles seized opportunities during their absence to gain power. Furthermore, the Crusades had profound religious implications. The clash between Christian and Muslim forces led to heightened tensions and sometimes violence. Yet they also created spaces for interfaith dialogue and cultural exchange, leaving an indelible mark on the religious landscape of the medieval world. 3. The Gunpowder Plot. On November 5, 1605, a group of English Catholics led by Robert Catesby attempted to assassinate King James I of England by blowing up the House of Lords with gunpowder. Known as the Gunpowder Plot, this audacious plan aimed to overthrow the Protestant monarchy and replace it with a Catholic ruler. Although the plot was ultimately unsuccessful, it had profound implications for England and Europe. First and foremost, the foiling of the plot solidified James I's position and led to a period of relative stability in England. The Gunpowder Plot also intensified anti-Catholic sentiment in England, contributing to a climate of suspicion and persecution. This had lasting effects on religious tolerance and paved the way for future conflicts between Catholics and Protestants. Moreover, the aftermath of the plot led to the establishment of the Church of England as the state religion, further cementing the link between power and religion in England. The echoes of this event continued to reverberate throughout English history, shaping the nation's religious landscape and international relations for centuries to come. 2. The Black Death. The Black Death, a devastating outbreak of bubonic plague, swept through Asia and Europe in the mid-14th century, leaving an indelible mark on human history. Originating in Asia, the disease spread along trade routes, reaching European shores in 1347. It is estimated that the Black Death killed over 25 million people in Europe alone, leading to a drastic reduction in population. This catastrophic loss of life had profound social, economic, and political consequences. The Black Death led to labor shortages, economic upheaval, and the decline of the feudal system. It also contributed to the rise of new religious orders and a shift in artistic and literary themes towards death and decay. Furthermore, the pandemic spurred significant changes in public health measures and attitudes towards hygiene and disease. Survivors of the plague developed a heightened awareness of mortality, which influenced art, literature, and cultural norms for centuries. The Black Death stands as a pivotal moment in history, reshaping societies and leaving an enduring legacy on human civilization. 1. The Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles was a peace treaty that officially ended World War I, signed in the Palace of Versailles in France. On June 28, 1919, the treaty was between the victorious Allied powers and Germany. It aimed to establish lasting peace and security among nations. The treaty contained various provisions, including territorial adjustments, disarmament for Germany, and the establishment of the League of Nations. But perhaps most importantly, it placed sole blame on Germany for causing World War I, forcing them to take responsibility and pay reparations for the damages they caused. While the treaty was intended to bring about lasting peace, it is widely seen as having contributed to the rise of Adolf Hitler and the start of World War II. Many Germans felt that the treaty was too harsh, and this resentment created fertile ground for extremist ideologies like Nazism to take root. Nonetheless, the Treaty of Versailles was a landmark event in international relations. It marked the end of the first global conflict and attempted to address issues of collective security and international cooperation. The establishment of the League of Nations, while ultimately unsuccessful, represented an early effort to create a global governance system to prevent future wars. The failure of the League of Nations and the subsequent rise of World War II highlighted the limitations of the treaty and the complexities of achieving lasting peace. Well, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave us a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't want to miss any of our future videos. And if you want to learn even more about these incredible moments in history, we've included a reading list in the description below. Thanks for watching.